On my last video, I told you guys that if you guys were to smash 1.5k likes in under 24 hours, I would drop the movie of this, and you guys delivered. So here's the movie to What If Deku Had the Rinnegan. I do hope you guys go on to enjoy this one, seeing as it was a lot of fun to make, and I honestly had a blast making this. The scripting process and this whole thing was just a blast to do. And if you guys go on to enjoy the ending of this, then please consider leaving a like, seeing as it does help so much with the algorithm. But ladies and gentlemen, with all that out of the way, enjoy.
Hey Ross, sauce it up.
Alright, so we start today's story with the birth of Izuku. Now, I was originally going to be thinking up of some weird way that Deku ends up actually inheriting the Rinnegan. Maybe Madara's in this series and he gives it to Izuku because I don't know. But honestly, too much work. So plot or something like that. You guys can really leave it up to your own interpretation. That said though, growing up, because Izuku is going to be having the Rinnegan, even though we are living in a superhuman society where there is people with mutation-like quirks, a lot of times those people will still get ostracized for that and will be treated like complete garbage. So I think that people looking at Izuku and seeing his eyes the way that they are would definitely still feel the need to bully him and make fun of him, also fear him, because Bakugo early on would call Deku's eyes villainous, saying that they're scary. Izuku as a kid would try to argue that Bakugo's quirk is just as, villainous as his is, considering that his is literally explosions, his is just flashy. But Bakugo says he doesn't know anything about being heroes, saying that most popular heroes have flashy quirks. Just look at All Might. And Izuku, he just kind of stays quiet. But for the following couple of years, Izuku decides that Bakugo is, well, he's not his friend. If Bakugo was his friend, then Bakugo wouldn't treat him like absolute garbage. So Izuku decides that he's just going to kind of leave Bakugo alone, and he hopes that Bakugo will leave him alone. Obviously, the Rinnegan abilities vary, and there's like so many abilities that when it comes to it, that like if I honestly started listing them, like I would literally never end. And so instead of just listing them off one by one and telling you guys exactly what the powers are, I figured that I'd go with the different approach of just using them, and you guys probably will understand. I mean, you clicked on the video and you've already seen Naruto and My Hero, so I assume you're going to get the picture. If you don't, too bad. But anyways, we continue on with the story, and Izuku during his upbringing years would pretty much struggle a lot when it comes to the abilities of the Rinnegan. Finding out its different in and outs of its abilities would be kind of freaky for Izuku, because not only does this thing have the abilities of pushing and pulling objects, teleporting because I gave him the ability of Sasuke, because why not? I'm not giving him Limbo, a bit too OP. Why am I... What? Actually, I mean, everything about the Rinnegan is OP. But basically, the main things that would shock Izuku would be things such as the abilities of the Naraka path, like the King of Hell. It's like literally so creepy to Izuku, as well as the Animal path. Being able to summon weapons is crazy. The Asura path, when it comes to the weapons, is kind of cool, but and that's not the main one that he focuses on. The one that Izuku works on the most is the human, not the human path, but the Diva path, because that one's sick. And he also likes to work on his teleportation ability. However, that one actually drains a bit of energy out of him every single time that he uses it, so we refrain from using those kinds of abilities. Now, keep in mind, Izuku will be having chakra. However, I just want to keep it restricted to Rinnegan based only abilities, so let's say he's not going to be using normal jutsus, and he's only going to be restricted to Rinnegan only abilities, right? So have that happen. And as for if Izuku is going to be able to water walk and like tree walk and all that stuff, yes, he has to. Like, come on now, I have to make this boy, I have to toss him a bone every now and then. So he's going to be able to do that. But bottom line is that by the point that he's already done with middle school, Izuku would already have an insane control over the abilities of the Rinnegan. Is he on Pain's level? Absolutely not. But he would have more than enough of an understanding to the point where he doesn't need to struggle with his quirk, and he can use his abilities to a weaker degree, right? Like they all work, but sometimes he loses control, and sometimes his push and pull abilities are like a little weaker than he intends. But basically, Izuku growing up would have been more of that quiet kid who low-key got hands at the same time, and that's pretty much all Izuku's childhood and upbringing would be. He'd be just about ready to finish middle school, and the teacher would walk inside of the classroom being like, "All right, settle down, kids," before then saying, "All right, look, bottom line, guys, you guys need to fill out these career aptitude tests. It's about to become that time in your lives, and you guys need to get ready for your futures." Everybody immediately starts moaning and groaning at the fact that they're going to need to fill out these tests. And then the teacher throws them up in the air and he's like, "Yeah, I got you guys," before then telling them that it was just a practical joke and that they're not going to be doing that. He knows they just want to become heroes. Everybody gets extremely excited and Izuku just remains quiet. Suddenly the teacher begins to list names off of people who want to go to UA or different hero schools, and Bakugo would be listed as going to UA. He immediately has a big old moment where he starts telling everybody that he's the best, that he's awesome, and then suddenly the teacher would read out the name of Izuku Midoriya. Izuku hearing this would be like, "Oh great, Bakugo's probably gonna try something," and he'd be absolutely right. Bakugo rushes over towards Izuku and sends a blast of an explosion right at the direction of the face of Izuku. However, Izuku, using the abilities of the Prey-to-Path, would absorb this explosion and not let Bakugo explode his desk. Bakugo would be like, "Huh? What was that?" But ultimately the teacher would say, "Bakugo, sit down. I don't want to have to send you to the office again." And Bakugo would be like, "Yeah, whatever." He looks at Deku and says, "See you after class." As from here, he goes towards his desk and thinks that it was just a fluke. Maybe he didn't use his quirk or something like that. Maybe he feels sick or something. But ultimately, Bakugo makes his way towards his desk, and by the end of the classroom, Bakugo presses Deku with both of his friends. They arrive, and Bakugo looks at him and tells him that earlier he got pretty lucky, but he's going to be needing to do him a favor. Pull out of UA or else. Deku looks at the direction of Bakugo's straight face and says, "Bakugo, look, this entire time I've kept out of your way, you've kept out of mine. How about we just keep it that way, okay?" Grabbing one of his books that he wrote hero notes on, he would then begin to try to put it in his backpack when suddenly Bakugo snatches it out of his hand and says, "Hero facts? Hero analysis? What a loser. Can't believe you're using this. If you want to become a hero, you just gotta be one. You don't need to study this stuff." And the other goons would begin laughing at him, being like, "Yeah, what an absolute loser." And then from here, Izuku just gets angry and he would say, "Look, Bakugo, I don't got time for this," snatching the book right out of Bakugo's hands before Bakugo then, realizes that Izuku did that. And so he would go to throw an explosion. However, it would be almost as if he couldn't do it. Why? Because Izuku would have used the Prey-to-Path to absorb his quirk ability, right? It absorbs ninjutsu, but I'm going to be saying that because Bakugo uses explosions, it's going to be able to absorb those kinds of things. Not physical ones, but like beam attacks and like explosions and stuff and like wind attacks is going to be able to cancel that stuff out, right? So he cancels that out, and Bakugo was left nothing but a normal human. Izuku grabs his stuff and literally walks past the goons, one of them grabbing onto his shoulder, and Izuku's eyes staring deep into his soul, showing him a vision of what would happen if he would dare touch him again. And it would just be a straight vision of Izuku ripping his soul out. The kid would let him go, falling to the ground before falling into unconsciousness, and Bakugo would be like, "Hey, what's wrong? Couldn't tell me you're scared of him," but he realizes he's knocked out, and then he would be like, "What a freak," before telling Izuku that it's not over there, that things aren't over, trying to explode him once more. But Izuku is tired of this, and he would put his Bakugo under a very, very powerful genjutsu, which would cause Bakugo to see what would happen if he truly did throw that attack. Izuku parries out of the way, uppercuts him in the stomach, and then proceeds to use his ability of the Diva Path, pushing Bakugo towards the wall, slamming him into it, and then pulling him and grabbing him by the throat, before ultimately beginning to crush it and destroying Bakugo's vocal cords so he can't even scream for help. Bakugo would be a little thrown off guard by this, and he'd be like, "I guess I finally know the nature of his quirk. Illusions." Falling to the ground and holding his neck, thinking about how painful that would be if that was to happen. But luckily, that's all it is, right? Just illusions. He can't actually hurt him. Maybe Bakugo was just imagining he was using his quirk, and that's why it didn't work. Yeah, that's exactly it. Bakugo would think. But no, that's not it. That's exactly what Izuku could realistically do. Regardless though, Izuku ends up making his way towards his home, realizing that he's a bit late, seeing as he was actually going to be going out for dinner with his family and his father had just got back from overseas where he works at. Izuku would take a different path home, eventually realizing that something is coming after him very, very rapidly. The Renegon being able to see in different directions and having access to, everything that's around him, and seeing as he can't deactivate it, Izuku seeing the sludge villain rush at him at top speeds and saying, "Give me your body, kid," would come at him, but Izuku would not be playing no games and would straight use the diva path to push the sludge villain straight into a wall, leaving it to splatter all over it. And ultimately, Izuku would walk his way towards it, saying that he's tired of having things get in his way today. He just wants to make it home and have some damn Alfredo pasta. And, the sludge villain is not letting him. So now, Izuku looks towards the direction of the sludge villain and says to get lost. Before then, a huge man would come out of the sewers, and it would be shown that it's All Might, laughing in his casual mannerism, before he then sees that Izuku had just taken care of the sludge villain. He would walk over being completely impressed by what had happened, and the first thing that Izuku would notice about All Might would be his left side. It would almost look like he has this terrible injury. Izuku could see past the costume, so after they end up putting the sludge villain in a bottle, courtesy of Izuku, then they would end up actually having a conversation, and Izuku would say, "All Might, before you go, I know you already autographed this, but I just have one more question. What's that injury on your left side?" All Might would be shocked at the fact that this kid realized it, and then ultimately his time limit would run out, leading All Might to de-transform, and Izuku would realize instantly what that is. He'd realize that he wasn't tripping and that All Might truly has gotten weaker. It has to be that injury, he would think. Immediately, Izuku would ask All Might why he hasn't just treated it, and All Might would tell him that he's been to every doctor in the world. There's no way to fix it. Ever since it happened, he's had his hero life, his hero activity cut in half. And Izuku says, "Yeah, I've noticed it. Ever since your fight with Chainsaw Man." And All Might would say, "Nah, the bastard's tough, but not that tough. I beat him." And then Izuku would say, "So then what's the issue?" And All Might would just be like, "Well, kid, my entire respiratory system's messed up. I can't keep up with my quirk. So, yeah, now that you know, I'm gonna need to ask you to keep it a secret." And Izuku would say, "Why would I keep a secret if I could just fix you?" All Might would be like, "What are you talking about, kid?" And Izuku would use the Naraka path, bringing out the King of Hell, as he would tell All Might to trust him, that he has a powerful quirk that could heal All Might, and all he has to do is step into the mouth of the King of Hell. All Might would look at Izuku with confusion in his face, and Izuku would look at him with just this trustworthy look, telling him, trust him, like he's a huge fan. He would never do anything to hurt the symbol of peace. I mean, he just defeated a villain, for crying out loud. Izuku then says that he's trustworthy and that he could prove it to him, going on to then say that it's harmless. If he steps in, he'll simply be healed of all of his injuries, and this could even bring somebody back from the dead. All Might goes inside begrudgingly, and once he exits, he tries to de-transform, but it doesn't work. All Might is 100% back to his prime form, and now he just looks at an Izuku who would be there looking at him with a smile on his face, and All Might is just like, "Kid, you healed me. How do I ever thank you?" And Izuku would be like, "I don't know, but if you want, you could tag along for dinner tonight." And All Might would say, "I'll be there, young man," before then jumping off and going to put on a suit. Izuku making it home and being like, "Guys, you'll never guess who I met." And Inko would be like, "You better have a good excuse, Izuku," as he would show her a picture of him and All Might taking a selfie together. And, All Might saying he's going to come to dinner, with Inko passing out instantly, and Asashi being like, "Did you just say All Might's coming home for dinner?" Or not home for dinner, but going out to dinner with us? And Izuku would be like, "Yeah, so put on a pretty good outfit." They would all do so, and they would meet All Might there at the dinner table. All Might would arrive, and he would end up pretty much bought out the place. He's so grateful to Izuku that he just wants them to have the perfect dinner. And it would be so smooth. All Might would laugh, they'd have jokes, he'd talk about his his hero career. We tell Izuku how proud he is and how he healed him and all that stuff. And All Might would just nonstop be thanking them for giving birth to such an amazing kid, saying that he hopes to see him in UA. And Izuku would say he's actually signed up there. All Might saying that's perfect because he's actually going to work there very soon. And Izuku would laugh saying he's kidding, but All Might would say he's not. Originally he was looking for a successor, but now that he can keep going, he can probably hold off on that for a little longer. Izuku would laugh and say he sure can, and ultimately afterwards they would end off the night on amazing terms, and Izuku would spend the next 10 months just hanging out with All Might like they were just basic friends, having sparring sessions in which All Might realizes, hey, this kid's kind of stronger than me. That's kind of crazy, huh? But no, yeah, it would be very, very quickly shown to All Might that Izuku is very much so in a league way, way, way above what All Might could have ever expected. And Izuku isn't scared of showing that. Like he shows it, and he is proud of the fact that he is more powerful than the symbol of peace. All Might's happy, and he knows that he won't even need to pick a successor at this point. This kid might be able to end the whole thing with one for all and all for one. The power that this kid has, he has no doubt that he could probably defeat All for One someday. So he would tell Izuku about it, and Izuku would say that that's definitely in the realm of possibility, but for now, let's just enjoy the evening. And All Might would say, honestly, kid, let's do it. Couldn't agree with you anymore. And Izuku would laugh before looking towards All Might and saying, this is why you're my favorite hero. And then what pretty much ends up going down is that, they chill. Eventually, All Might drops Izuku off home with the supercar. And then eventually Izuku goes on to take the written exam, and then going outside and taking the recommendation exam, because he was not about to go and face off against some robots or stuff like that. So pretty much what ends up happening is when the 0-pointer would be about to stomp on Uraraka, seeing as that stuff would still happen, Nezu uses his remote control and just turns off the robot before it could stomp Uraraka. Eventually Recovery Girl arrives, saving her, and then ultimately she would be saved, with Izuku not meeting Uraraka quite yet, and Bakugo noticing that Izuku wasn't even in his testing area. The nerd must have got scared from his last encounter and realized that some dumb illusions aren't going to be getting him anywhere in life. But little does he know that Izuku is just one step ahead of him this entire time. And so Izuku and Bakugo would be kind of like on weird terms, if I do put it lightly. But regardless of that, what pretty much goes on to happen is that Izuku would find himself inside of Nezu's office after the entire recommendation exam would happen, and All Might would actually recommend Izuku for an entire scholarship, saying that Izuku is already far more powerful than he is, and Nezu would have a conversation with Izuku asking about his powers. Izuku explaining all of his abilities and saying that they might seem a little villainish, so, do take heed. Nezu would say not to worry, that there is no thing as a villainous quirk. That's just society doing its thing, and that he understands that society is a very cruel thing. But Izuku ultimately sighs before saying, well, it consists of a couple. I have the Naraka path, which allows me to summon the King of Hell, and what it pretty much can do is heal people, and I could also use it to interrogate people. If they lie, well, let's just say their subscription to life is cut short. I have the abilities of the Preda path, which can pretty much absorb attacks like energy beams and things of that nature, like fire and stuff, and wind and ice. I can do that. I also have the animal path, which allows me to summon insanely powerful creatures, the likes of the levels of even All Might himself. And then I also have the ability of the Asura path, which allows me to summon weapons out of my body at will, as well as the Diva path, which allows me to control repulsive and like pushing in forces. He then goes on to explain that he also has the human path, and that pretty much has the abilities of pulling souls out. And he also has the ability of something else that he's been working on, a little dragon that can just zoom by and just kill everybody by sucking their souls out. Not to mention he also has the abilities of teleporting with objects that he can see, and seeing as his distance of vision is very, very, very far, seeing as he has the Rinnegan, it's really, really easy for Izuku to do those things. So after hearing all of this, Nezu would be extremely shocked and say that Izuku's abilities definitely are something worthy of noting. And then Izuku would say that, oh, he can also put people under very, very, very powerful illusions, and he also has the abilities of being able to stick onto walls and walk on surfaces, That the only downside of his quirk is that it absorbs his energy, his life force, so he can't go too crazy or else he'll die himself, you know? But ultimately, he says he has a lot of it, seeing as he's been training on that his whole life, so it's not something that worries him too much. But it used to be a very, very big downside where he could barely use one ability at a time, but now Izuku could use them all at different times, and his speed and combat abilities alongside with all of the powers that he possesses would make him a very, very feared foe. His oh my god, I was about to say the Andrew Tate quote. I don't know if you guys have heard it, but it's like, my sheer indefatigability makes me a feared opponent in all realms of combat, you know, endeavor and all that stuff. I was gonna say that, just a little corny joke in there, but ultimately Izuku would do so, and the exam would pretty much be over, leading towards Izuku making his way towards the UA classroom 2 days later, looking up and seeing a billboard that just says fandom. Izuku being like, "What's fandom?"
As anime fans, we love to show our support to our favorite shows by rocking anime apparel. But something I'm pretty sure we can all agree on is it's so expensive. So I've partnered up with Fandom to bring you all affordable, high quality anime merch that you are sure to love. And if you use my code Xehther at checkout, you can even get an extra 10% off the already affordable merch. Keep in mind, it does come from overseas sellers, so its sizing is going to be different since it's overseas. That said, let's get back into the video.
Izuku seeing this, he's like, might have to check it out. But ultimately, Izuku makes his way towards the classroom, and it would be here that Izuku would be greeted to possibly the worst thing that he could have seen on this day. It was such a good day for him when suddenly he sees Katsuki Bakugo. And Bakugo seeing Izuku would be like, "Huh? How are you here? Did you cheat or something? You must have hacked the system to get in, you quirkless not quirkless nerd, but you useless nerd." And Deku would look at Bakugo saying, "Yeah, nice to see you too, Bakugo. Looks like we're going to be sharing a classroom, so hopefully you leave me alone." And Bakugo would say, "You wish, Deku. I'm going to make sure that these next couple of years of our life are a living hell for you." Suddenly, a man inside of a yellow beanbag thing would step out, and he would say, "Make sure that you do that, because the second that you start, I'll expel you without a second thought. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Put these on and meet me outside. And by the way, problem child, you have another one of those little outbursts, and I promise you I'll get rid of your quirk, and I'll make sure you can never attend another hero school in your life again." As he would then look towards Izuku and say to make sure that he doesn't have any other encounters with this kid at all. And Izuku would nod before then following Aizawa's instructions, and Uraraka would be like, "But what about orientation?" And Aizawa would say, "We don't need orientation. We have 3 years to get you guys ready for the real world. And that's not enough time. So follow me, put these on, and do as I say. Follow that kid over there. He knows what's up." Everybody looks towards Izuku, and once they would make their way towards the changing rooms, Kirishima would notice that Izuku is absolutely ripped. Kirishima would be like, "Whoa, man, you be lifting or what?" And Izuku would say, "Yeah, kind of. I got into it a while back when I realized that my quirk needed a lot more stamina, so calisthenics and weightlifting have definitely been on my plate, as well as a bunch of cardio." And Kirishima would say, "I'd love to work out with you someday, man." Before, Izuku says, "Yeah, definitely." And then Mineta would question Izuku on his eyes, saying they look weird, but there's some sort of mystery behind them that just makes them look awesome. They look like almost imposing. He kind of feels a bit of fear looking into them. And Izuku would be like, "Oh, sorry about that." But Kirishima would say that that's manly. And so they would find themselves outside right next to Aizawa, as Aizawa would look at all of them and be like, "All right, here," tossing the ball towards Bakugo, who would throw the ball and get 700 meters. Eventually, Aizawa would show everybody the score, and then when everybody would begin to get excited, he'd be like, "Oh, you're excited? Well, how's about this? Whoever comes in last place is expelled." Immediately after this, everybody would freak out, and Aizawa would then reach into a bucket of baseballs before he then grabs one and tosses it towards the direction of Izuku. He would go towards the circle, and then suddenly Aizawa would tell him not to hold back on him, to throw it as far as he possibly can, and to make sure he doesn't get last place. Izuku would hold on to this ball before asking Aizawa if he's positive he has to go all out, saying that he might hurt a couple of his classmates if he does so, and Aizawa would say that he'll be fine, and that he'd better go all out. Before Izuku holds onto this ball and immediately using the Diva Path, would use the most busted ability that he could have possibly used on this thing, and he pretty much would go on to toss the ball up into the air, right? And then he just uses his pushing ability to just boom, like send that thing flying. Aizawa would read the charts and it would read infinity, and Izuku would be told that he did great. Now, all I'm going to say is that when Izuku used this ability, not only did Izuku push the ball forward, but Izuku pushed everyone forward. Everyone and the ball got pushed forward, and Izuku was just like looking at them as he would apologize to them, and then they would take the rest of the couple other exams that were left. Izuku, following all of this, he would end up being ranked number 1 in the quirk apprehension test, and Mineta would be the one that would actually get expelled because he comes in absolute last place. Now, you guys are probably like, damn, Mineta's gone? And honestly, bro, same. So I just changed my mind. I don't want to get rid of Mineta. I love Mineta. So instead, we're going to get rid of Hagakure because she literally never does anything. So yeah, we'll get rid of her. It's not like we even need her to the story. So we're going to get rid of her and keep Mineta in because, you know, he's comic relief. But following this, Izuku would pretty much just make his way home, and once there, Izuku would get a text from All Might telling him that he did a great job, telling Izuku that he can't wait to teach him in a couple of days. And Izuku would walk into his classroom 2 days later when he sees All Might bust through the door, and All Might has his usual bravado on, all the people in the classroom just going absolutely nuts to butts over All Might's presence. But Izuku, seeing as he already knows All Might, he's been with him, you know, he's already had dinner and stuff with him, he doesn't freak out as much as everybody else does, but there is still that hint of respect and adoration towards All Might that is, you know, obviously you would have for the number 1 hero, right? But pretty much what ends up happening following this is that they would all be told about the fact that they're going to be taking hero versus villain training exercises. They're going to be doing 2v2 battles where they have to save a bomb and all that stuff, right? And following this, All Might tosses a little piece of pen and paper to everybody, and all of them would write their names down on it, as well as a random number that they would think of, right? Everybody who would write the same numbers would be paired up, and the option of the numbers would be, actually no, I'm just gonna say it's random. I don't know why I was like making this so much more complicated on myself than I had to be, but yeah, it's random. And eventually the team selection would essentially equate to Izuku and Mineta versus Bakugo and Ida. Why Mineta? Because I don't want the ship to be Araraka, and I just don't even want to focus on a ship. So yeah, we're not focusing on that, and instead we're just going to be saying that it's Izuku and Mineta versus Bakugo and Ida. Okay, so we all know that Bakugo doesn't really like Izuku, and he's already gotten beat down by Izuku, you know, once. Izuku also showed that he definitely does have the power to back it up, and that his abilities aren't some illusion in the quirk apprehension test. So Bakugo is on the fences whether he should attack or not attack Izuku, but all he knows is that he wants to get him back for everything. And Izuku thinks that if the eyes is what Izuku has, it has that gives him access to his power, then maybe he'll just smoke up the room so much he can't use his eyes. So that's Bakugo's strategy. And so Bakugo charges at Deku, screaming his name, Izuku telling Mineta to hide, and he would do so easily, cowering in fear and running away like an absolute Chad. But Izuku stays back and looking towards Bakugo. He would tell him if he really wants to do this right now. And Bakugo says, I'm gonna do this and more, Deku. You're mine. And as long as those people can't, and as long as these cameras are off, they won't know what happens. So, you know, Bakugo then looks towards the direction of Izuku and shoots a very powerful explosion at him with his right hand. Izuku would use the Diva Path to push Bakugo back and the explosion as well, and Bakugo would get sent flying towards the wall. Bakugo then would try to cause so much smoke to go up into the air so that Deku can't see, and Deku knows that this is exactly what he's doing. However, Deku doesn't care. Deku wants Bakugo to do this, and he could not be any happier at the fact that Bakugo's trying to use this strategy. Izuku lets it happen. The smoke would fill up the entire room, and then eventually Bakugo says, "You can't see no more. Say bye-bye to your quirk, loser," coming in with a powerful explosion by using his gauntlets. And when that happens, Izuku sucks up the explosion of the gauntlets and would tell Bakugo that that was a good try, but he can still see everything, using his push ability to push the smoke away, and then grabbing Bakugo by the throat, summoning the King of Hell and tossing him in there, where the King of Hell and Izuku would be inside, and Izuku would tell Bakugo one thing. He would ask him one thing: "Why are you such a jerk?" And then he would tell Bakugo, by the way, you lie, you die, showing him a genjutsu of exactly what would happen if Bakugo truly did lie. And Bakugo he feels like his soul just left his body, and he has to begrudgingly tell Izuku the real reason why he has bullied him, the real reason why Bakugo is the way that he is, and everybody else would hear it, and Bakugo's just embarrassed. Like, Deku didn't beat Bakugo, he mentally scarred him, because now Bakugo has this whole thing out in the open, and without character development, this would make Bakugo very, very angry and make him want to like do bad things to Izuku, but he knows he can't, so he just kind of has to live with it and just deal with it. Bakugo ultimately tells everybody that the real reason he picks on Izuku is because he's always thought Izuku was better than him, and he doesn't like the fact that Izuku's better than him, so he wanted to make himself feel better by pushing him down at every chance that he could, and not let Izuku know that he's better than him. But that's really it. He just thought he was better than him, and he wanted to be on the same level, so he figured that if he picked on him and he pushed Deku down, then they'd be on equal footing. And so Izuku would smile and tell Bakugo that that's all he needed to hear, for letting him go and telling Bakugo that he always thought he was great too. He just always had that damned god complex, and if he only was to get rid of it, he'd probably be an awesome guy. He tells Bakugo he'll just let bygones be bygones, and that, by the way, nobody but me and you heard that. I made sure of it by using my genjutsu ability, so that everything that they heard through those intercoms wasn't anything that, you know, what we just said. You know what I mean? And Bakugo would be like, what do you mean? And Izuku would say, trust me, just know they won't hear anything. And from here, Bakugo and, you know, Ida would end up being defeated swiftly by Izuku and Mineta, who would just pretty much grab onto Deku's back and ride his coattails. But basically what would pretty much end up happening is that Izuku would make his way towards, you know, All Might's room at the end of everything, and All Might would ask Izuku who he thinks would be a worthy successor for One for All. Izuku would tell All Might that now the best option would probably be Mineta, and All Might and himself would have a huge laugh after that, as he would tell All Might not to worry about something like that, but for now, probably the best successor candidate is most likely going to be him, even though he really doesn't want the quirk. But he would tell All Might that whoever he does give it to, it should probably be somebody quirkless. There's already going to be enough people in UA with powerful quirks, and they're going to make a difference in their own way. Why not give another extra hero the chance to do something that, you know, somebody with a quirk is already going to do? You know, the chance to be somebody powerful, special, the chance to be number 2 hero. Izuku would say, and All Might would say, number 2? Izuku saying, yeah, that number 1 spot is reserved specially for me. All Might would laugh and would love the confidence that Izuku's exuding, and he would then go on to tell him that he has always thought Izuku was the best possible option. Izuku saying that that's way too much praise, and saying that, you know, he's just happy doing his job, you know what I mean? He wants to be a hero, and he just wants to put his best foot forward. And All Might would say that he's great for that. And so we would have a time skip to the day of the USJ attack. They'd be on the bus and they'd all be conversing, talking about who the most powerful one in the class is, when suddenly Tsuyu would say, I think it's Izuku, as everybody else would be like, I mean, Izuku's powerful, but look at Todoroki, he literally one-shotted his opponents. And they'd be like, yeah, Todoroki is pretty strong. But then, you know, Deku would be thinking, Todoroki, seriously? Like, I could crush him with nothing but one finger. But ultimately he wouldn't say nothing, and once they end up arriving at the USJ location, he's seeing inside of the USJ, seeing that there's like a bunch of villains in there, he would look towards Aizawa before letting them go inside and close the door using his ability, before telling Aizawa that inside of there is at least 100 villains. And if he was responsible for that, and if this was going to be some sort of test for the students, and Aizawa would say that there was not supposed to be anybody in there but not Recovery Girl, but 13. And Izuku says, well, then this is a villain attack. Go ahead and tell everybody to stay out here. Me, you, and 13 will handle it. And Aizawa would say, shouldn't we call for backup? And Izuku says, I am the backup. As he proceeds to pretty much make different versions of himself, like out of nowhere. Like obviously he would, Actually, no. I'm not even gonna make him use different versions of himself. I want them to watch as Izuku single-handedly destroys everybody. I just really want to let this sink into the villains that there was absolutely nothing they could have done to stop Izuku, whether they liked it or not. So yeah, Izuku is gonna absolutely destroy them. He would walk inside by himself, and Aizawa would tell him that he should wait for backup, but Izuku would say, nah, he's fine. And he would walk inside, and all of the villains would be watching as Izuku steps in there, and Izuku would say, Shinra Tensei, before then suddenly a massive gust of just pushing energy. I'm not sure if I'm even using the right words. That might even be the name of another popular ability that Pain uses, but just know he's using the pushing ability that Pain used to destroy the village, but on a much smaller scale. So he gathered less chakra, and so it was not as potent, but ultimately ended up defeating all of the villains that were present, and the only ones that survived that entire collision and stuff like that was Shigaraki, because he hid behind the Nomu so that the impact couldn't hit him, and the Nomu tanked the impact. But suddenly, Izuku would look towards the direction of Shigaraki before asking him if he's the leader of all of these coward-like villains, and Shigaraki would say, what's it to you? What's it to you, hero? As Izuku would look towards the direction of Shigaraki and say, I mean, I'm just a guy who's here to defeat you. He would then go on to ask him if he's really the main one, considering that he just acts like an overgrown man-child. Like he just is a very powerful man-child. That's all he is. And Shigaraki scratches his neck and would be like, Nomu, teach this kid a lesson. The Nomu blitzes at Deku with like earth-shattering speed, and he would punch at Izuku. But Izuku would hold one hand out and absolutely tank the blow of the Nomu. He would then grab it, and he would use the human path to pull out the soul of the Nomu. And obviously it's a dead person, so when this happens and Izuku realizes this thing has no soul, he's like, it's not even alive. So Izuku finally gets the chance to go all out. So now Izuku, just looking at the Nomu, would smile, and suddenly what Izuku would end up doing is using his animal path and summon this gigantic 3-headed dog that would rip the Nomu limb from limb. And then Shigaraki would watch in absolute terror, rushing towards Kurogiri, as Kurogiri would try to teleport him away, but Izuku, using the Diva path, would push Kurogiri away so far, and then he would use the King of Hell to grab onto Shigaraki and tell him, where is your real leader? And Shigaraki, he can't lie anymore, but he would simply say, I don't know, but his name is One for All. And the Naraka Path, or the King of Hell, wouldn't kill Shigaraki. And that would surprise Izuku, because that means that Shigaraki truly didn't lie. Shigaraki was so scared that he actually didn't lie to Izuku. And now Izuku would go on to ask him what his purpose was for being here. Shigaraki explains the plan, how they had intel of All Might being weak, and Izuku would laugh, saying, trust me, All Might's everything but weak. As he then looks towards Shigaraki and says, well, it's too bad, because you're going to jail. Suddenly a black portal opens behind them, and a man would step out wearing a suit and a mask, saying, I don't think so. Suddenly Izuku turns back around, and seeing One for All in the flesh, he would smile before looking at him and saying that it was a pretty bad choice of him to make his way here. And All for One would say, why is that, kid? And Izuku would say, because I'm here. And All for One would laugh, saying, little All Might fanboy, huh? Well, what do you think you let go of my successor and, me and you handle things? Before using a gust of wind to push Deku back, but Deku would suck it in using his Preda Path abilities before then using his Animal Path and summoning in one of his, summonings. Suddenly, however, All Might bursts through the door and looks at All for One before then saying, All for One, it's been quite some time, but I think it's time to end this, blitzing at him and throwing a punch. Izuku, pretty much seeing this, would be like, I guess I'll let All Might have his moment. And so All Might would blitz at All for One, and because we saw a weakened All Might to be able to take out All for One, I think that an All Might who has now been pretty much reverted back to what his prime state was, would pretty much easily tank one for all for one and just be able to absolutely decimate him, with the battle being over and All Might being a bit battle scarred, but Izuku simply using the King of Hell to heal him up and then telling All Might that what he did was great and that he definitely needed to get that job done. Suddenly, they would end up locking All for One up, and Izuku would say that a man like that doesn't deserve to get locked up, using the human path to pull All for One's soul out and pretty much tell All Might, sorry, that, you know, this was for the greater good. Somebody like him, he genuinely shouldn't even be given the chance of mercy by being thrown into jail. All Might would say he couldn't agree more, and so they lock him up and it would just be confidential. It would be stated to the kids that, you know, they just simply needed to get a couple of things in order, and then they enter the USJ, seeing it in complete ruins, and Aizawa would say, yeah, Izuku, why would you do that? And Izuku would look towards the class saying that he might have overdone it, that Aizawa asked him to do like a lie. He'd make up a lie on the spot, and Aizawa would be like, we'll come back in 2 days. So they go back to class and have a normal school day, and nobody even realizes what went down. They were outside of the USJ, and the only person who kind of understands what happened would be Jiro because of her earjack quirk. However, Izuku would look at her, use a genjutsu on her, and she would realize, okay, I'm gonna stay quiet. And that's exactly what she would do. And the whole situation would be covered up. Following this, we would end up having the sports festival arc, which would go down very, very much so just like in canon. I mean, Izuku, because he got in through recommendations, wouldn't give the speech, so Bakugo would go up there and absolutely disrespect everybody. However, once the race would start, Izuku, using his teleportation abilities of the Rinnegan, would be at the start line, and as soon as the pistol would be blown, Izuku would teleport towards the direction of the finish line and get first place instantly. Following this, Izuku would then be paired up with this group that he's going to be using for the cavalry battle. And the group that Izuku would go for is actually the same one in the original. Sorry, actually, no, it's not. It would definitely be Mei Hatsume, because she wants to, you know, be a gold digger for clout off of Izuku. And then it would definitely be Tokiyami, because Deku thought that his quirk is pretty impressive. And for the last person that Izuku would have ended up recruiting, it would have been Mineta, because he would have rushed towards Izuku and been like, please be my partner, please be my partner. And Izuku ultimately would have actually ended up accepting. Following this, Izuku and his team would easily get through the cavalry battle portion of everything, and following this, we would then have the 1v1 battles. In the first match, Shinso would try to brainwash Deku, and when Deku would get brainwashed by Izuku, when Shinso would brainwash Deku, Deku would laugh as he uses a genjutsu on Shinso and would tell him that what he just attempted to do was so laughable, he's not even gonna be harsh on him. Like, it would be kind of a Kurenai situation where she tried to use genjutsu on Itachi, and Izuku just pretty much pushes Shinso out of the arena using his diva path to just send him flying out of the arena, and Shinso would land on the grass softly, being eliminated so fast that Shinso was like, how? Like, he talked to me, how was he not under control? But Izuku wouldn't say a thing, and he would advance to the second match, being then faced off against Todoroki. And as for that match, Izuku would easily curb stomp Todoroki, showing everybody why Izuku is who he is, you know what I mean? Using his abilities, he pretty much would end up tossing a big, let me put it like this. Todoroki shoots ice at him, right? Izuku would be like, alright, and he would use the diva path to absolutely destroy the ice. He would grab a little piece of ice, toss it at Todoroki, and Todoroki would just dodge out of the way. However, when that would be happening, in such a flying Raijin-esque kind of way, Izuku teleports with the ice, getting right behind Todoroki, and then what he would do is just absolutely destroy Todoroki, using the Asura path to create a cannon in his hand, would shoot at Todoroki point blank in the face, and Todoroki would get sent flying out of the arena. I mean, I know Todoroki's a superhuman, he has this quirk and all that stuff, but bro, I don't care who you are, if you get shot with a cannon that powerful in your face, you're gonna go out of the arena. And that's exactly what would happen. And after this, we would finally have the battle against Bakugo with Deku, and Deku would look towards Bakugo before telling him that it's going to be just like old days. Bakugo saying no, it's not, and rushing at Izuku before Izuku handicaps himself and uses taijutsu. And using taijutsu, bro mollywops Bakugo, I'm sorry, there's no other option. He he just absolutely wails on Bakugo, and there was absolutely nothing that Bakugo was going to be capable of doing. I'm sorry, but it is what it is. However, following the UA Sports Festival event, we would finally be in the Stain arc. And because we're now in the Stain arc, and I don't particularly think that the Stain arc would be any problem for Izuku, I'm going to be saying that Izuku's just kind of going to be going everywhere except for with Gran Torino, because he doesn't have one for all. And even though All Might would be like, maybe you should go with this guy, Izuku decides that instead he's going to intern with Aizawa, because he kind of likes the way that he runs himself, and he likes, Aizawa as a person. He thinks that him being straight to the point and straightforward is something that Izuku likes. During this time, he would learn how to use the scarf with Aizawa. However, he realizes that it's not really for him, and on the internship would be somebody else by the name of Shinso. Izuku's pretty glad that Shinso's there, considering that if Izuku didn't have the quirk that he did, Shinso would definitely have beaten him. That quirk is so damn powerful, and that Izuku's Genjutsu's abilities have honestly been underwhelmingly used. If I'm being really honest with you guys, I could genuinely finish this what if right now and just say that his Genjutsu was enough to beat all the villains. I mean, let's be honest, if Izuku really wanted to, he could have just used a Genjutsu on All For One to have pretty much left him in a vegetable-like state, and so could he with, Overhaul. Realistically, Rinnegan Deku is just so dang overpowered that there's no real villain in the story that's really going to be making it any hard for Deku. So if I really wanted to, I could just be like, that's the end, he's just too powerful, but I know that you guys didn't come here for that. So instead, just keep in mind, the rest of this is just going to be slice of life strictly. Okay, so continuing forward with the story, Izuku would kind of just be chilling internship with Aizawa, right? And during this time, Izuku kind of bonds with Aizawa. Okay, I'm sorry, I was chewing on some plastic while I was telling the what if. I'm sorry, I don't know why I started doing that, but I just did. But no, yeah, what's it called? During this time that Izuku would internship with Aizawa, he would learn mainly things about how to run an agency. And so once we would get towards the point where they finally end up returning back towards the classes, or sorry, not that, but once they get towards the point where Izuku realizes that, hey, you know what I mean, like something on the news is going crazy, he tunes in and he realizes, oh, Hosu's being invaded. And Izuku would ask Aizawa if they can go. They're like one town away. Izuku would just blitz there, and using his Rinnegan abilities would find out that Ida was about to get absolutely curb stomped by Stain. And when I say that, I don't mean like, oh, he was gonna get hurt or paralyzed. No, Ida was literally about to die. Stain was about to plunge a knife into him, but Izuku would end up arriving using the Diva Path of the Rinnegan abilities and shooting Stain far back. Then, using the abilities of the Asura Path, would shoot 3 missiles at Stain, which would completely blow him up. And then Izuku would look towards Ida and tell him what he was thinking, rushing him to the emergency room, and then eventually making his way towards the Nomus, where what Izuku would pretty much do is just use his animal paths to just completely eat these Nomus. Like, they rip them limb from limb. And following this, they make their way towards school about 1 week, not 1 week later, let's say like 2 weeks. No, 2 weeks, but 2 days later, I'm sorry. I'm completely tripping over my words, but 2 days later, they make their way to school. And once they're there, things are just too easy for Izuku. Izuku going to school is just so unbelievably bored, and he would end up asking Nezu if he can actually become a hero, which is what we're going to be covering for the following, like, let's say 5 minutes of the story. Just Izuku being a hero and being the youngest hero of all time at that. Izuku would have a ceremony of honor for him, saying that he's going to become a hero for, pro heroes and stuff like that. And during this time, Izuku would stop an overwhelming amount of crime, considering that Izuku is so powerful that, like, even villains that would give normal top 10 heroes a problem or a run for their money would be nothing towards Izuku. He just bodies them. But ultimately, he would be hit up by the Hero Commission, and they would ask Izuku if he would be willing to do things that most heroes shouldn't, that most heroes aren't able to do, like actually get rid of the problem, saying that most villains will never change, and that just by throwing them in jail, that's not enough. So they really need to strike some fear into these villains. So somebody needs to get rid of them. And so Izuku would kind of fulfill a bit of a Lady Nagant role, where Izuku just goes around absolutely taking out villains and using the Naraka path to pretty much torture them, and not only that, but to gain information out of them and make sure that they can't lie. Then following this, Izuku would kill them rapidly and just continue doing this, working as an agent for the government. But ultimately Izuku would be asked to kill somebody, which Izuku would be confused. He's asked to kill a normal hero because the hero was about to leak information on what's really happening. And Izuku would be like, so you want me to kill a hero for doing his job? And the Hero Commission says that it's a lot more complicated than that. And Izuku's like, no, it's not. You're asking me to kill him because he just wants to do the right thing and tell people about the existence of this organization. Are you kidding me? And they're like, well, you're contractually obligated to do this. And Izuku's like, you know I could kill you, all right? And you know, they're like, you wouldn't do that though. You're a hero. You know what I mean? You have a reputation to uphold. And Izuku looks at them and he's like, reputation? You seriously think that I care about something as dumb as a reputation? You're even dumber than you look. And then from here, Izuku, looking towards the direction of them, would be like, look, I'm gonna do what I want. And I don't feel like killing these guys. So, how about instead I get rid of you and the problem will be solved? And you know, the commissioner would be scared. He'd be like, no. He's like, this is not how this works. You know, he then calls people up as like backup. A bunch of like other like agents would end up arriving. And Izuku, like without wasting a single breath, using the abilities of the whatchamacallit, of the dude, like, oh man, what do you call it? He would use the ability of the meteor. He would summon a meteor down and he would say, check your satellites. Suddenly, and by the way, this is a secret organization, so it's out in the middle of nowhere. And Izuku would, you know, show them that there's a meteor falling from the sky. Izuku would tell them good luck with that and walk out of the door, as you know, they're completely terrified about what's about to happen. And Izuku would say, yeah, you're done. And he pretty much single-handedly takes out the organization. I bet you guys forgot about that ability of the Rinnegan, but yeah, bro can summon meteors. Like, he can literally summon, bro, the Rinnegan is one of the most busted abilities ever. And like, I don't think it's even like given enough credit for how powerful the Rinnegan truly is. But yeah, he brings down a meteor on them and then just goes back to his normal hero duties, deciding that he's just gonna kill only the people that really truly deserve it, that are like really wicked. And one day he bumps into Overhaul. When he sees him and when he sees that this girl is the one that's getting tortured, he would ask Eri if she's okay. She nods, and Izuku, sensing the fact that she's lying, he would ask her, you know, to just look away, and she does so. And Izuku would he would use the pull ability of the Diva Path, sucking in Overhaul before he just quickly uses the human path and sucks Overhaul's soul out, dropping him to the ground and telling Eri that the bad man was beat. She looks at Overhaul's body on the ground, and Izuku says that she's never gonna hurt her again. Eri would like drive her head into Izuku's chest, and she just starts like crying happy tears as Izuku looks at her and asks her if she wants to go get an ice cream. And Izuku doesn't even turn Overhaul's body into the police. Bro just tosses it in the trash can and then proceeds to go get a sundae with Eri, and that's the end. Like he literally just gets a sundae with Eri, and that's it. Bro just chills. He's just like chill no jutsu, you know what I mean? He's just vibing with Eri. I'd like to say that he adopts Eri and all that stuff happens, and then ultimately we just get an awesome happy ending. Rinnegan Deku was super fun to cover, and honestly, having such a busted Deku that is just able to do whatever in the world he wants is so fun. There's another what if that I'm going to be doing soon that you guys should definitely be on the lookout for, which is what if Deku had every quirk. It's pretty much going to be where Deku has like a Russian roulette type quirk, where every day he's going to wake up with a different quirk. And it's not going to be the same. Some days it could be like a useless quirk. Some days it could be an overpowered quirk. Some days he could wake up quirkless. It's going to be the most fun thing in the world, okay? So definitely tune into that. I had a subscriber actually suggest the idea, so yeah, go check that out. But with no further ado, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys went on to enjoy today's movie of What If Deku Had the Rinnegan, make sure to leave a like on today's video, seeing as it would help a ton with YouTube's algorithm. And with all that out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, I love you all, and peace.